G'day guys, today I'm going to be building the shelving unit. It's going to be for my sister so that she can display my little niece's bits and pieces that she has. Now, my sister has offered to paint it white, so that's great. I dodged a massive bullet there because my sister has no idea how difficult it is to paint things. But you can buy this sort of thing from the big box stores. What it is, it's 4 shelves suspended between a couple of A-frames. It's a fairly common design and it looks quite nice. I like the way that that just sits there like that. It looks good. But the problem with the big box store stuff is that all of these shelves, it would just be a single board of 16mm melamine sheet, particle board, whatever it is. And once you put a little bit of weight on top of it, it starts to sag. And if you put those shelves in direct sunlight and it heats up and it cools down and it heats up, they start to sag a lot pretty quickly. I'm not a big fan of that. And because my sister was going to paint this white anyway, I didn't want to spend any money on hardwoods. So I've just built it out of pine and MDF. So these shelves, it's basically a 3-piece component. There's a piece of MDF on the top, a piece of MDF on the bottom, and pine lipping around the edges. And that creates an engineered component that is really, really strong. It resists deflection by quite a lot. I'd stand on it, but it's not going to resist that much deflection. Yeah, no, I've got to lay off the donuts. Anyway, stick around and I will show you exactly how I have over-engineered the hell out of this, just so that my sister can end up painting it white. Right, so there's my T-section solid pine edge banding that I'm going to use to create the edge of these shelves. And what it is, I've got a 9mm rebate, a 9mm tongue, and a 3mm rebate. The 3mm rebate accepts the bottom of the shelf, which is 3mm MDF, so that'll just slot on there like that. There's one to the side and one to the other side, and I'll miter joint that and that so it brings that outside corner together nice and neatly. And then I've got my 9mm sheet of MDF that goes to the top of the shelf, and that slips in there like that. That goes in there, pulls it all nice and neatly. Remember, that's going to get miter jointed there later, and that becomes pretty strong, pretty sturdy. Like even just having that front lip there, I can feel it resisting the deflection, except right at the back there, it's still deflecting quite a bit. So what I can do, because these are a 9mm tongue and this was 9mm MDF, I can just simply run a strip about that size along the back there, maybe one through the middle, a couple through the guts there, create a bit of a grid work, and that just creates like a little mini torsion box, if you know what those are. It's basically the same thing, it just creates the two cords, a bottom cord, which is this MDF, a top cord, which is the 9mm MDF. When you put weight on it, it creates opposing forces and it wants to stay flat. It might be taking a fair amount of time, but I'm quite enjoying myself, to be honest, even though it's a complete waste of time. So there's a shelf that's been glued up overnight. It's dry, it's good. It's hollow, but it's good and strong. So if I just set this up between two rails here and press down with 4 fingers as hard as I can without breaking my fingers, you'll see that it deflects somewhat. Whereas if I was to get the 3 same pieces loose, just a bit of 3mm MDF, that front rail that I've put in there, the edge banding, call it what you will, and a bit of 9mm MDF, and just put them on top of each other loosely, and then once again press down with my 4 fingers as hard as I can, you'll see that this deflects a lot more. So because this has all been laminated together with glue, it becomes an engineered component, and there's a bunch of forces opposing each other, which creates a very flat, very stable, very strong unit, while still being fairly hollow and lightweight. So although in my application this was a complete waste of time, you might have an application in the future where you need to have a lightweight shelf, such as having a floating shelf just on the wall there, and you want to keep the shelf itself kind of lightweight so that the shelf doesn't begin to tip down under its own weight. This is a good option to go for. We end up with a fairly thick shelf that's lightweight and hollow, but still dimensionally stable and strong as an ox. Not bad, pretty close. Alright, with this joint coming together nicely, what I want to do is, the whole unit I want to be a knockdown unit so that it can be taken apart and painted easily, then put back together. So what I'll do is I'll get a drill, I'll drill all the way through the back and into this front rail in a couple of points, maybe here and here, and I'll put a dowel straight through and straight through, and that'll create 2 locating points to hold that joint together in the correct position. And then to clamp it together, I'll drill another hole through the center with this demon bolt, go through the back, and I'll insert this insert nut into the front one, screw that together, it'll clamp that together. Too easy. So that's the frame that's held together nice and well, fairly flush there. The two dowels locate that joint together and that bolt clamps it together, nice and easy. The next thing to do is to mount these shelves like so, and I'll do that relatively the same way. What I'll do is I'll put a couple of dowels in through the side here to connect into a couple of holes here that the dowels will hold the weight of the shelf, and then I'll put some bolts through the side of it to clamp the side to the shelves itself. So that's it there. I still need to put some back panels in there to brace it, because although those bolts are actually clamping it all together, it's much stiffer, but it still wiggles quite easily. Like, it's not wiggling as much as what it was before, but now it's still wiggling a fair amount. So you might say, well, that's kind of good enough, but it's really not good enough, because this will probably be ending up being used as a bookshelf. Books weigh quite a lot of weight. As soon as that leans to the left a little bit, all that weight comes down and it wants to just keep on leaning until it falls over. So I have to brace it. So it turns out that I forgot to press record while I was flush trimming these bits. What I've done is I've got a flush trim bit in my router table. I've double-sided taped this initial template to these bigger ones here, put that down there, held it in there, done, and I get two matching curves, nice and easy. Little touch up with a bit of sandpaper on this routed curve and she'll be good as gold. So I need to cut a little rebate inside here to accept each of these bracing panels, back panels, decorative back panels, whatever you want to call them. So I'll do that over on the router table right now. So these housings for the back panels that I'm going to put in there were made with a 1/4 inch cutter, which leaves a 1/8 inch radius in each corner. So I went ahead and put a radius on the top and bottom edge of these panels, and that just sits in there like that, just nicely. So now with the back panels ready to go in, I just want to check corner to corner to make sure the frame is square. 1638. 1638. So now that it's square, I can put these panels in there. Check square, check square. So while that's sitting square, I can screw through these holes that I've already pre-drilled into the rails, legs, side pieces, whatever you want to call them. Put a screw in there, and those screws will stop the racking side to side. Now I'm just using short little 20mm screws. I don't need a long screw, I just need a quick one, a short one. Now that I've got 4 screws in the bottom panel and the top panel, that should be holding it in a constant position. Hopefully it's still square. So before I do the rest, I'll just check it and then I'll do the rest. 1638. I can't read. So 1638, 1638, that'll be braced quite nicely at the moment. Put the rest in there and she'll be good as gold. Alright, so with those back panels in there, they act as bracing, so it doesn't wiggle backwards and forwards. It wiggles a little bit on my uneven garage floor, but for the most part it's not racking sideways, so that's really good. Next thing is just finishing everything off. Sand it all, round everything over, no sharp edges. And because my sister's going to be painting this one, I don't have to worry about applying the finish. Yes! But I still have to sand it. Well, thanks very much for watching, guys. I've gone ahead and I've sanded it all up and everything's nice and smooth. There's no sharp edges. So my sister can now paint it, and when she gets it painted, I'll make sure I'll get a decent photo of it and I'll put it up on my Instagram and Facebook and I don't know, any other social media, my website. There's a long lost cause. Anyway, thanks for watching and I'll catch you later.